Yet another film that introduces itself for me. This is 2021's Reminiscence, and we're definitely in for a trippy ride. In a world that loves to relive the past, of course there are going to be films that use the idea of digging through people's memories to solve crimes. This one was nice enough to throw Hugh Jackman in, so it's already a win in my book. Spoiler alert, for those that want to watch the film on their own time, links to the film are in the description below. As we open over a flooded metropolitan, it's clear that this is set in the future. And we hear Nick Bannister talking to us about how the past is a key moment in the time we are in this planet. As Nick walks the flooded streets, he comes to his office building and meets his assistant, Emily. As she helps him get dressed for his client, the two of them go into his workspace where he meets his client. And we see the device that he uses to delve into the client's memories. This sounds like an addicting service for them to provide. The amount of people that would be hooked on reliving the past to see loved ones, old flames, relive the glory days, or experience that one-night stand again, the possibilities are endless. And someone has to make a living off of it. That's where Nick and Emily come in. If you could relive a memory, what would you want to see? As Nick paints the picture of his client's memory, he can see it play out before him. And we see that the client just wants to spend time with his dearly departed dog again. After letting his old buddy know that it's on the house, Emily shows her disdain for giving free tips, but Nick has faith.
Truth is, nothing is more addictive than the past.
Didn't we just call that? It doesn't matter how much we say something is going to wind up being a bad thing. It's too powerful of an experience to deny the possibilities. If people had this as an addiction, they probably wouldn't need to turn to other harmful addictions. After explaining how it affects different people, Nick talks about how it can be crippling to some people to rely on delving into the past to live in the present. After a long day at work, Emily and Nick are surprised by an unexpected visitor. May comes in and asks them for help to find her lost keys. So I can imagine that delving into this tank isn't cheap. And you're going to put out that much money for a pair of lost keys that would have probably cost less than $10 to replace? Even a locksmith would be only $100 or so. This feels fishy, but to each their own. As Nick takes notice of her, he begins her trip into the night before to relive her actions. As he spots when she takes her keys, he has her follow her line of events through each time she handles her keys. But he notices something else. Something's wrong with May. After Emily tries to pull her out, Nick makes her wait while he watches her sing for work. And he seems to fall madly in love with her performance. Once they close up, Nick heads home in the daylight, and we find out this is actually Miami. Honestly, you can't tell much difference between this Miami and what it is now. Just a little bit of extra water on the streets. The cities are nocturnal to get out of the unbearable heat of day, but something haunts Nick's memories that makes it hard for him to sleep. After some sleep, Nick goes to meet with the DA, Avery. But her case against the land baron named Sylvan isn't going as planned. So Nick heads to the sunken coast to try and find May at her job. I feel like there's a point where professional courtesy has to pop up and play its part. This dude delved into her memories, saw her naked, and now he's using that information to try and give her earrings back? Or at least that's how it'll be played up? We all know he would have found a reason to show up there now that he's heard her. After everyone's left, May approaches him at the bar and thanks him for returning her earrings. After a little social experiment on how the mind works, the two of them end up going on a little excursion to May's apartment. She knows what's going on, she knows how good she looks, and she knows that he's hooked. I can't tell if we should trust her yet, but my first guess is no. After she approaches Nick, the two of them quickly remove their clothes and things get hot and heavy real quick. This whole scene is something that Nick will probably be reliving quite a bit. She mounted him like a praying mantis. After their night together, Nick goes up to the roof to have a lovely conversation with her, and she asks why he doesn't really go in the tank. He explains that reliving memories are okay in small doses, and the world begins to turn on him. Oh, nice little sneaky time hop they did on us there. The classic. He's been in the memory this whole time. As Emily asks him not to go back in the tank, Nick simply continues questioning why May left him even though they had been planning a whole future together. Emily doesn't know. She assumes May's moved on, and she wants Nick to do the same. Emily's that strong supporting character that you wish everybody had one of. Drink your weight in whiskey, forget about her, and move on. Solid advice. Nick can't get over how May simply vanished, but Emily tries to get him to understand they need a day job to keep him afloat. So Nick goes home to rest before meeting with Avery. In his memory, he explains his journals of memories to May, and she finds out that it's full of the memories of the people he interrogated in the war. Even in his memory of her, he wonders where she disappeared to. He goes to her work to ask about her, but she just isn't there.
I'm not sure May was the person you thought she was.
You don't say! Everything points to her being a ghost or a part of people who were made to disappear, but he just can't figure it out. As he continues delving into memories of them, we see that he already fell in love with her after only a few months together, but even her face looks uneasy at the idea of settling down in a future with Nick. Nick eventually takes her to a place that overlooks the sunken coast, but he's woken up by the sound of an alarm. When he wakes up, he sees a note Emily left him that reminds him to go to Avery. When he goes outside to investigate a knocking sound, he finds something in the watery street. May's earring is simply lying in the street. Now it seems like she's just toying with him. Just leave him be if she doesn't want to be with him. Soon, Nick and Emily arrive at the police station where Avery has a criminal she needs evidence from, and they set up to delve into his mind. After spending all day, Nick confirms that the criminal is dying, so it's harder to get anything out of him. Once Nick tries a new approach, he finds the man he's looking for. St. Joe is played in the memory, and he's talking to Cyrus Booth. While in the memory, Nick sees May singing at a club, but the footage is from over 5 years ago. After delving further, we see that St. Joe has a sweet spot for May, and Cyrus is a dirty cop. Nick sees that May simply falls farther into the rabbit hole and is actually a druggie that stole from St. Joe. That's a habit you just don't kick. She was playing nice with him, but which version of May is the real one? Nick has no idea, but now he has to find out for himself. So he heads to New Orleans to trace the memories he just saw. Once in New Orleans, Nick goes to St. Joe's base and says he's a friend of the criminal they interrogated. That lie is quickly seen through, and St. Joe interrogates Nick about why he's really there. Once he mentions that May is what brought him here, Joe feels sorry for Nick, but not enough to let him go. Yeah, that would make me a little concerned no matter whose side I was on at that point. Sure enough, it's Emily, and she shoots everyone in sight as she helps Nick escape. Once back at their office, Emily asks Nick what he's really looking for in his memories of May. When she realizes that Nick thinks May took some memories from him, she can't believe it. But that changes when he makes her remember the last time she was there. We see that she confronted May about hiding something, and May admits to having been an addict. We also see that May pieces together that Emily has feelings for Nick, but that's the last we see of the memory. When she comes out of the tank, she begins to defend her feelings, but Nick shows her that since she got drunk, May got access to the vault and took the memories of Elsa Kareen. That night, Nick heads to the floating market to look for Elsa, and he finds a friend that tells him she's dead and a red-headed woman took her child. I think this is getting a little too convoluted to really justify looking for this woman anymore. He's not even a cop. Just chalk it up to romance lost in the wind and move on to the next one. When he thinks he hears the tune they share a fondness for, Nick ventures into an abandoned building, and Cyrus is there to beat him with a flashlight. After telling Nick to forget about her, he calls someone and says Nick won't be bothering them anymore. Leave her be! When you get beat with a flashlight in an abandoned circus building, it's time to stop. When Emily pulls Nick out, they piece together who Cyrus is, and they head to Avery. It turns out that Sylvan had died before his deposition, and his widow and son are being walked out. The widow was actually an old client of Nick's, and this sparks a memory for him. When he goes back to the widow's memory, he hears a voice that reminds him of one of Elsa's memories. And he realizes that Walter Sylvan is actually the father of her child. Okay, things are getting a little turned around now. As a quick recap and a recap, Sylvan has a widow that he has a son with. He's also the father of Elsa's son who was taken by a red-haired woman that helped kill Elsa. And Cyrus is in town trying to get Nick off of May's tail. There, all this convoluted timeline broken down into 3 sentences. As Nick and Emily go over what they knew, Nick tries to send Emily away from him by setting her up with another job, because he's too obsessed with his case to let her in. At first, she's reluctant to the idea, but she finally realizes she has no choice. Otherwise, she won't survive him. Nick makes his way to the Barrens where the ground was dry and the rich survive there. Nick goes to see Mrs. Sylvan, but when he's there, he gets roped into an audition to play Mr. Sylvan in a sick way to relive a fantasy memory. He tries to get through to her, but she's caught in the memory. Nick brings her to a mirror and makes her face reality. She explains that Booth and May are working together, and at one point, May was working with Sylvan. When her son comes in, she goes back to her fantasy and has Nick kicked out.
To find Booth and May, I had to go to hell itself.
Hell, this just still looks like Miami. Guess he's not too far off, though. If anyone's from Miami, tell me if you recognize any of this. Soon he finds May, but when he follows her, he finds Booth is making another woman play her part. He tells the woman to get out of there, and Booth hums the song that Nick remembers from his first meeting with May. After finding out that everything had been meticulously researched, Booth jumps out of the window and eventually disarms Nick. Are we sure May's the mastermind? Cyrus Booth seems pretty conniving and quick to land on his feet through this whole encounter. After watching a lot of Nick's encounters, it still boggles my mind that this man survived 2 tours during a war. He's literally been bested in every encounter so far. Emily, on the other hand, I'd believe is a heartless killer that saved his life through the entire time. Nick even gets the best of Cyrus finally, and he traps his arm in a grand piano that sinks to the depths. Nick then jumps in after him, saves him, and gets left down there. Even when he wins, he ends up losing. This man needs a sidekick. As Cyrus sits up thinking about May, Nick quietly sneaks out of the hole and administers a sedative that puts him out. When he comes to, Nick has him rigged in the tank to jump into his memories too.
Truth ain't gonna set you free. It's gonna damn you.
Again, I'd say that's enough warning to just turn him into the authorities, then just be done. Go find Emily, build the business back up. Nick goes back to when Cyrus first met May, and he finds out that St. Joe sent Cyrus to collect May. He ends up recruiting May to set up Nick. Nick finally realizes that he was simply a mark this whole time, until he sees that May finally gained a conscience and fell for Nick. Nick moves forward and sees how it was all to find out about Elsa and Freddy. We see Cyrus kill Elsa, but May arrives just in time to save Freddy and take off in a boat. When he realizes that May came back for him the day he found her earring, he sees that Cyrus kidnapped her before he could open the door. He makes Cyrus take his memories to what he did to May, and he sees that he overloaded her with drugs and tortures her into telling him where she hid Freddy. Let me clarify, none of this redeems her for her behavior this whole time, but she gets it right this time. May begins speaking to Nick through Cyrus's memory, and I can just imagine that Cyrus is a little bit like, what the hell's going on here? She expresses her feelings for Nick and hints on where Freddy's hiding. Once she says Nick's name, he stabs Cyrus in the chest and throws herself over the edge. Once Nick collects himself, he makes Cyrus relive the night he got burnt, and makes it so he has to replay that night over and over again.
This is where your journey ends.
He might not have been able to really defend himself this whole movie, but this was a just way to handle all of this. Perfect. Nick leaves him there and heads for the Sylvan residence. Once there, he interrogates the Sylvan boy. Nick knew that his father had an affair, and he had Booth sent to kill Elsa and Freddy. Nick tells him that the police picked up Freddy earlier that morning, and they were on their way to get him. The son picks up the gun and goes to shoot Nick, but eventually turns it on himself.
From the count of 3, imagine it.
Damn, that's cold for a mother, but he still can't bring himself to do it. After everything is all said and done, Nick goes to see Emily, and he technically turns himself in with the reminiscences of people involved in this drama. In his final moments with her, he tells the story of what happened, and he uses that as his confession to his crimes. As Nick walks through a city on fire, he sees that justice was served to all those that were deserving of it. In his last moments, Nick goes into the tank and relives the entire story we just saw with him and May.
I'm sorry, I know it's late. I lost my keys.
Coming full circle really seems like the only good ending they could have expected in a story as dreary as this one. After a quick recap of what we've just experienced, we see that time has passed and years later, Emily visits with her daughter to leave flowers. An old man stuck in his memory. While living in the past can be a dangerous idea, I can imagine much worse ways to live out my last days than to relive the best times of my life so far. In the end, everyone got the best of what they could have expected. This was a highly anticipated film, and it was definitely for good reason. Definitely check it out when you have the time. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.